room. It's people you know, and you said the same thing. I love what you said about failure and that you want to be able to have people come on board with failure. I know one of your sayings is that, success in business is a series of failures, failing to the next and failing to the next and so forth. How important is failure and the ability to handle it and be okay with it or be even excited about it?
Really important, and it's something that I am naturally okay with, and I often find I take for granted that fact when you actually need to amplify it for your team. So what I've started to do more and more is now I'm lucky that I do have at least one experience starting a business, right? When I started Rent the Runway, that was my first startup. I now harken back to all of the mistakes we made when we started Rent the Runway. And to be honest, I have to dig to think of those because I'm a positive person. I'm focusing on the good.
So it's not that they didn't happen, but they're not in your schematics.
That's not the first thing. I remember the great things, the fun stories, and even things that were really crummy where, we were the ones packing boxes and dresses every day until midnight in the first couple of years. That wasn't fun every day, but I remember it in this awesome way. Those were the startup days. That was great. We were in an office that had no heat on Mondays because they didn't turn up the heat yet. And it was so fun. We all wore fingerless gloves and Snuggies, and it was great. In the moment, probably wasn't so great. But so I found how critical it is to take these moments of failure and to share those stories with the team. Because if they don't hear and see that happens and that's part of what is fun down the road and what is just part of startup life, they might not be as comfortable failing themselves.
As a mom, you got 3 kids. Yeah. They're quite young. You got a 2.5-year-old, I think. You got 3 young children.
2 to 6.
2 to 6. That's 3 to 6. That's a lot. How do you do that? Not logistically, but how do you do it emotionally and psychologically? Because logistics just take care of themselves, but how do you make that work?
It's a lot, and I like it that way. I like being busy. What I found my best tool is actually involving them in what I do. So even, my 2-year-old probably doesn't understand me, but certainly my 6-year-old, I will share exactly what I'm doing with her. I will tell her that I'm going to Las Vegas and I'm speaking with a group of people, and I'll tell her all about, Tony Robbins and what you guys are doing and why you're here and how I'm going to speak to you, what I'm going to talk about. She's not feeling like she is being excluded. She feels like she's part of this, and she feels proud, hopefully, and inspired to go after her dreams one day. So that has been my biggest tool, is to make it, it's not a choice if you make them a part of it.
Yeah, I agree. I remember I taught, give her a hand for that. It's beautiful. Yes. One of my favorite photos, Tony has a home in Fiji where we teach fitness events in Fiji. One of my favorite photos is of me teaching in Fiji with my 2-year-old girl hanging onto my leg on stage while we're teaching. It's kind of cool. Let me ask you, is if I'm in this room and I'm not a startup, and I'm not at that beginning phase, how do I bring that entrepreneurial spirit back to my business? How do I reinvigorate? How do I bring back that spirit? Maybe I'm 5, 10 years old, or I need some reinvigoration. How do I do that?
Yeah. Well, so I am actually a part of Walmart right now.
Right.
Talk about a big company, right? So Jet Black is wholly owned and funded by Walmart. It's the world's largest retailer. So talk about having to be an entrepreneur, right? Taking this large elephant company and saying, how do we move and drive it forward quickly? And that's why I'm there. And what I found is we are in a separate office. I make decisions on my team, on kind of the priorities quarter to quarter. And so it acts almost like Walmart's a venture capital firm in some ways, and then kind of approving a yearly budget, if you will. I still need to get buy-in in the way that you would in a fundraising process, but they've let us have the room to really run and move quite quickly. It's sometimes meant that we don't leverage certain resources that you might be really tempted to leverage, because it's always a trade-off of what lets you move faster. But I think that there's more times than not when it's to our advantage. There's a lot of partnership meetings that we can get and that we can take and have access to because of this organization. I have a 401k plan that I can offer to my employees that I didn't have at Rent the Runway for years and years. So I think it's leaning into the strengths, owning them, and then finding ways to create the same elements of moving fast, small dynamic teams, setting people off kind of in their own zone to create their own space and drive quickly. And what I found is it creates a lot of inspiration throughout other parts of the organization. So people in Walmart who are in no way connected to Jet Black, who I've met tangentially or who just hear about what we're doing, are feeling like they're a part of innovation and they're inspired, and that's really rich and rewarding to their job. The other thing I would say is that each of you, by virtue of your own background and whether you're a mom or whatever country you're from, your path of life, you bring a unique perspective that makes you uniquely armed to solve problems and identify problems and solutions. And so I think, taking stock wherever you are of that unique life path and how you can bring that lens to identify an opportunity and what you might solve is really special. So right now, women drive online consumption about 85% of the time is driven by a woman, right? And a large percentage of those are moms. And so I think for those of you who are in that situation, it's like, that's a real advantage. You have a unique perspective that actually is going to influence the economy in a very big way. So keep at it.
Cool. Very nice. Give her a hand. We might take some questions, if you will. So raise your hand, and we'll take some questions and just suggest who the question is for and so forth, and we'll see how we go. And we're going to start all the way at the very, very top mezzanine level and freak out my mic runners. The lady in the white.
Hi, my name's Olivia. I actually help women negotiate salaries for a living. I love what you've done. You're one of my inspirations.
Oh, thank you.
And so my question to you, I know you're talking about resilience and not being afraid to fail, but a lot of the women that I work with have failed in their careers, and getting themselves back up is really a big part of the hurdle. So when you've failed big time, what was the recipe to get back up?
So, well, thank you for your kind words, and I love what you are doing because it's very important. You know, often I find that women are more conservative with their ideas or with their career ambitions, and obviously don't often ask enough in negotiating their salary, so it's critical. It's about the team. Like, I think if you have a team around you, you pick yourself up, you dust yourself off, and you go on to the next. So when Jen and I started Rent the Runway, we were lucky to have each other. The first meeting that we had, the business was about 1 day old, was with Diane von Furstenberg. She is the most famous fashion designer, certainly that I know of and I can think of, and she hated our concept in the first meeting. Hated it. And we walked out of there, and I was pretty, like, I felt rejected, right? It felt terrible. And having Jen by my side, we were able to laugh at the moment and to say, what did we hear from her? Like, why did she hate this? What could we learn and listen and pivot and create into a unique opportunity? And there were so many of those moments where other people in that team, that core founding team, did that and served that purpose for one another. And so I think you need to surround yourself with those people who will help you see the good, and then to kind of have the resilience to pivot your concept and go after something maybe even bigger.
Cool. Very nice. Give her a hand. Very nice. Thank you.
Hi, Jennifer. My name is Wendy Jakes. I'm from Houston, Texas. So this is not a question for myself. It's a question for my daughter. She is 17. She's going to be a senior this year. We just took a 2-week trip down to California, the 101, visited several different colleges, including Stanford and SDSU, UCLA. Since she was